Imagine you're deep in the heart of a forest, miles away from civilization, when you suddenly hear a faint, eerie scratching at your door. Is it the wind or something far more sinister? In today's video, we're diving into one of the most chilling and unexplained phenomena ever documented, a set of bizarre rules left behind by a fire lookout who mysteriously vanished in the woods. What happened to him, and why did he warn others to never break these rules? Join us as we uncover the spine-tingling truth behind the legend of the Smiling Lady, and why those who encounter her may never be the same again. After my divorce, I had nothing left. Have you ever felt that way, like your entire life just crumbled in an instant? I wanted to start over, so I moved out to a rundown apartment in a new city. Have you ever moved somewhere with no connections, no real job, no pets, no kids, and obviously no wife? I was just existing, really. What would you do in my situation? I was constantly applying for any job I could find, and eventually, I landed a miserable one in a miserable cafe, serving miserable coffee to miserable people. What kind of fresh start was this? Despite my recent relocation, I needed a more drastic change. But what would that be? Suddenly, amidst all those random applications, one stood out. Can you guess which one? It was for a fire lookout in the middle of the woods. No prior experience needed. Doesn't that sound strange? What kind of job requires no experience and offers total isolation? Yet, I remembered filling out the application. Would you have done the same? Out of nowhere, I got the job. But do you think it was a stroke of luck or something else? A gruff-sounding guy called me and said I'd be living in a tower until the end of summer, just 2 months. Could this be the change I needed? He also mentioned it was imperative to start right away. Why such urgency? I followed his directions, driving to the farthest point I could, then hiking the rest of the way. Have you ever hiked 4 hours into the wilderness, not knowing what to expect? The tower was bigger than I imagined, minus 100 feet tall. But why did it need to be so high? Next to it was an outhouse and a storage unit. What was I getting myself into? As I climbed the winding stairs, the sense of isolation grew. Do you think you'd enjoy that kind of solitude? Inside the hut at the top, there was a bed, a big radio, a table with a map, some books, a toolbox, and a small portable radio. The hut was surrounded by windows. Would that make you feel safe or exposed? I set my rucksack down and remembered the gruff man's instructions to radio the nearest tower. But what if no one answered? When I did, a chirpy-sounding woman, Allison, responded. What kind of person would be excited about living out here? She gave me the low-down toilets at the bottom, food stocked weekly, and the job was mostly looking around for fires and making sure no one camped where they shouldn't. But why would anyone camp out here, so far from everything? I thanked Allison, and, feeling somewhat settled, I started flicking through the handbook. Would you read it cover to cover, or just skim it like I did? As I flicked through, a piece of paper fell out. What would you do if you found a list of rules, handwritten in frantic blue ink, about avoiding a smiling lady? Would you take it seriously or laugh it off as a prank? The rules were bizarre and terrifying. If you were in my place, would you even consider staying after reading something like that? Feeling uneasy, I decided not to ask Allison about the weird rules. Why give her more reason to think I was an idiot? Instead, I explored a bit, trying to get settled in. But could you shake off the feeling that something was wrong? That night, as I drifted off to sleep, Allison radioed in to wish me good night. Would that comfort you or make you more on edge? My first day was over, and I explored the woods, trying to clear my head. Do you think a machete would make you feel safer? Allison checked in occasionally, but I still didn't bring up the rules. Should I have? As I got ready for bed, I heard a scratching noise. What would your first thought be? An animal. Something worse. The scratching got faster, more intense, almost as if whatever was making it was getting excited. What would you do? Would you turn off the light like I did, or keep it on and stay alert? Then both of my radios emitted a high-pitched noise. Do you think that was just feedback or something more sinister? I remembered the rule about scratching. How would you feel reading that rule, knowing that something was scratching at your hut? I followed the instructions, turning off the radios and hiding under the covers. But what kind of nightmare was this? Eventually, the scratching stopped, and I managed to fall asleep. But was that really the end of it? The next morning, I felt stupid. Do you think it was just an animal after all? I tried to go about my day, but I couldn't stop thinking about the scratching or the list. Would you be able to push it out of your mind? While on patrol, I found an empty campsite with a reddish-yellow tent. Would you investigate? No one was there, and I felt a weird sense of dread. Have you ever felt like something was just off? The rule about the campsite came to mind. Would you run back to the tower or stick around like I did? Allison told me she would check it out, so I headed back to the tower. Do you think that was the right call? That night was uneventful, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Could you? The next day, I decided to check out a strange trail that wasn't on any maps. Would curiosity get the better of you too? The trail led to a series of red handkerchiefs tied to trees, ending at a small bunker. Would you go inside? I did, and inside was just a sleeping bag and a broken camera. What kind of person leaves something like this behind? I planned to charge the camera and see what was on it. What do you think I'd find? That evening, I found the campsite again, but this time the fire was lit. Would you confront whoever was there? I was angry, determined to deal with this camper myself. But when I checked the tent, it was empty again. What was going on? Suddenly, a blood-curdling scream tore through the air, and a dark figure burst out of the trees, running straight at me. How would you react? I ran as fast as I could, the figure's screams piercing my mind. Would you dare look back? I made it back to the tower and slammed the door behind me. The screaming stopped, but now there was only silence. What was scarier, the screams or the silence that followed? I tried to radio Allison, but what if the voice that answered wasn't hers? Would you even try to reach out, knowing the rules? The next morning, Allison chirped a cheery greeting. Would you believe everything was fine, or would you confront her? I told her about the list and everything that had happened. Do you think she already knew? She admitted that every person in my tower before me had experienced something similar. What would you do with that information? Harvey, the guy before me, became obsessed with the smiling lady. How would you handle being in a place where people just disappear? Allison didn't know why the job listing said the position might suddenly become available. But would you trust her? Allison mentioned her sister went missing in these woods before she started working here. Would you press for more details? She admitted she took the job to try to find her sister. What kind of courage does that take? But could you believe her story entirely? The camera I found charged up, and I flicked through the photos. What do you think I saw? Pictures of my tower, a family, and then the bunker. Could it be Harvey's? Would you want to know what happened to him, or would you rather stay ignorant? That night, I woke up to the sound of crying. What would you do if you heard a woman crying in the woods between 1 a.m. and 4 a.m.? The rule said to ignore it, but could you really? I couldn't. I geared up and went outside, searching for the source. Would you? Would you? The crying led me to a woman, her face covered, sitting by a tree. What would you do if you saw her? Her arms were twisted and broken, her body skeletal, but her crying was so mournful. How could you just ignore that? My radio made a static noise, and the crying stopped. Could you look up, knowing she had heard you? When I did, she was looking at me with lifeless eyes and a wide, unnatural smile. Would you run, or would you freeze? I ran, but she was fast, her broken arms cracking as she chased me. How do you escape something like that? I barely made it back to the tower, and as I slammed the door, the scream stopped. But was I really safe? The next day, I kept thinking about the scratch marks I found inside the hut, leading to my bed. How long had she been there? Had she been watching me the whole time? What would you do if you knew she was already inside? As night fell, I heard scratching again. How would you handle knowing she was trying to get in? I turned off the radios and hid under the covers, but the scratching got louder. What would you do if you heard someone running up the stairs, knowing you had only seconds to act? I turned on the main light just in time, and the running stopped. Would you breathe a sigh of relief, or would you stay on edge, knowing she was still out there? I didn't sleep that night, and the next morning, I decided I needed to meet Allison. Would you want to confront her in person? When I reached her tower, it was empty. How would you feel standing in a place that should be occupied, knowing something was wrong? I radioed her, and she claimed to be in the tower. Was she lying, or was there something else going on? Inside the tower, I found a stack of newspapers about 2 missing sisters. Could Allison have been lying about everything? Would you trust anything she said? Then I found a file with my information in it. How did she know so much about me? Had she been watching me the whole time? Suddenly, Allison appeared behind me, her voice cold and distant. She started talking about how her sister just wanted to make me smile. What did she mean by that? What had she done? Allison confessed that she had killed her sister, pushed her off a ledge in a moment of hunger and desperation. How would you react to a confession like that? Would you feel sympathy or fear? She said her sister found her again, still smiling, still hungry, and that now she was after me. What could I do to escape this? In a panic, I pushed Allison away, and she fell from the tower. Would you be able to live with that, knowing you had just killed someone? But even in death, could I trust that she was truly gone? As I ran back to my tower, I felt like I was being watched. What do you do when you know you're being hunted? Would you keep running, or would you fight back? I knew I had to leave the woods, but how could I escape her? That night, I heard scratching again, and this time I knew she was trying to keep me here. Would you give up, or would you try to fight your way out? As the scratching stopped, I peeked out and saw a figure standing below, her face illuminated in the darkness. Could you face her, knowing she was waiting for you to make a mistake? The next day, Sam, Mark's daughter, arrived. Could I trust her? She said she knew everything about Allison, Harvey, and the rules. But why was she just now revealing this to me? Could this be another trick? Sam claimed that the only way to escape was to burn the smiling lady's body. Would you believe her, or would you think it was another lie? She led me to a cave, saying it was where Allison's sister had died. But how could I be sure? Was this really the end, or just another trap? As we entered the cave, it became darker and darker. Could you handle that kind of darkness, knowing something was lurking within it? Suddenly, I heard a crack behind me, and Sam was gone. Was she the smiling lady all along? In the darkness, I found Harvey's bag and another knife with his name on it. What had he discovered that I hadn't? Then I saw Sam, her body twisting and breaking as she transformed into the smiling lady. How do you fight something like that? The cave was filled with the other victims, Harvey, his family, Rick, and Allison. They held me down as the smiling lady bit into my chest. What do you do when you realize there's no escape? Now, I belong to her, just like they do. How do you warn others when you know they'll never believe you? If you ever find yourself in the woods and you hear the rules, will you follow them? As we unravel the mysteries of the smiling lady, it's hard not to wonder how much of this is pure legend and how much is a terrifying reality waiting to be uncovered. Whether you believe in the supernatural or not, stories like these remind us of the power of fear and the unknown. If this tale sent chills down your spine, be sure to subscribe for more stories that explore the dark corners of the world. And let us know in the comments, would you dare to spend a night in that tower?